Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday class live with Guy Finley. We're glad you're all here. Welcome to everyone in the room and all of you joining us online. We're so happy that you've joined us and taken this time out of your day to be fed. If you have any technical problems online, you can always go to support@guyfinley.org, and Kate's behind the scenes. She's happy to help you. For all of us in the room, please be sure to silence your cell phones. If you're new, the format today will be Guy speaks for about an hour, and then we have a 5-minute break. At the break, take time, grab a cup of coffee, and come back for our Q&A. So then we have a chance for you to join us online, and you can go to the GoToWebinar platform if you want to join, if you want to ask a direct question to Guy, and we'll go into that more after the break. But for everyone in the room also, we'll come up, ask some questions, and interact more about the talk or something going on in your life that you'd like more insight on. I think that covers our getting started. I will read the title and the key lesson. Title today is Enter the Divine Flow of Life Where No Fear Can Dwell. And the key lesson reads, words are rocks in the stream of consciousness. No name is the experience it seems to define. Experience, like the flow of a river, is silent, wordless movement. We can either live in and from the conditioned experience of a word, or in the timeless awareness of experience itself.
Are you ready for an adventure? Do you have your e-tickets? I'm going to share with you this morning, and I'm glad if you're here live. Certainly it's good to have the people in the room. And I would be irresponsible if I didn't say to those of you that could be here and aren't, you just don't know what you're doing to yourself. Not because the speaker is in a great shake, but because you have no chance of having your life shaken up as long as you pursue what you believe is the source of your pleasure and contentment. You're dead in the water and you don't know it. We're going to take a kind of a fascinating journey. I'm going to walk you through some ideas that on one hand, you'll be able to see without much effort the truth of it, because your experience with the similes, the things that I will show you, is pretty much solid, and you'll be able to see and relate to what it is that I'm trying to show you about yourself through the analogies, through the metaphors that I use. Other parts of this talk are going to be, without question, difficult. Now, the fact is that in real life, as stunning as it may seem, how many of you are pretty sure that life is difficult? Difficult. Seems that way all the time, doesn't it? Today's talk is to help you understand that the only difficulty you have in life is the one that you add to it every time you try to derive a sense of self from the moment, without knowing that you're doing so, and without understanding the level of consciousness that's unendingly creating that conflict that you call a difficulty with life. You can't hope for things seen, and you mustn't, but on the other hand, to begin to have your eyes open sufficiently enough, you'll actually begin to grasp the idea that what you call difficulties is really nothing other than a momentary divine intervention, something that has come to help bring you into another kind of level of being, another kind of flow, not the flow of thought, which you're already an unconscious master at, or more accurately, that you're already mastered by unconsciously, but completely different. So I'd spend an hour just on the key lesson, but I have the equivalent of about 30 of those to cover with you. So let's take a nice deep breath, everybody. Just try to, as best you can, just try to be here. Try to listen. Try not to go traveling on some little boat to wherever the hell it is that your mind always takes you when you hit a rock in the stream of life. A man once came to see the Bodhidharma, a Buddha, and the man said to Buddha, "My mind, it's absolutely driving me up a wall. It's making me crazy. Please," he said, "help me to tame my mind." Now, how many of you would like to have your mind tamed? It's like a wild animal, isn't it? The problem is that you don't know it's a wild animal when you're sitting there and holding your thoughts and identity on your lap and stroking it ever so, and it's going, I like this feeling of myself. This is good. Whatever the cat murmur, murp. Buddha said, "Get out of here. Go away." But the man was persistent, as one must be, because otherwise the lesson is never learned. The man would not go away, and he kept begging for help. And finally, the Buddha says to him, "All right, look, tell you what. Show me your mind, and I'll tame it for you." Now the man took this at earnest, and he left. And he came back a week or two later, and he said to the Buddha, "I couldn't find my mind." Buddha says, "There, I tamed it for you." Now, we love little stories like that because for a moment we go, "That's pretty cool. I just need Buddha in my life to present a kind of koan out of life itself so that I can begin to experience for myself what it is not to have someone else or some idea tame this runaway mind of mine, but something that can help me discover." And now I'll ask you ever so quickly, what's the lesson in this story? What's the lesson in this story? Anybody retain it long enough to consider the lesson? What's the lesson in it, Chris? Chris said the lesson is the mind isn't real. Anybody else? Leah? That we live in imagination. Anybody else? All right. The lesson is that there's no troubled mind to be tamed. And there's no one there to tame it. That's the lesson. See, you keep trying to tame your troubles, don't you? Isn't that your whole life is predicated to having moments of peace and some kind of pleasure, and then something happens. You don't even know what it is. Something turns, and in the moment of the turning, the turbulence and the torment that was laying beneath the surface of that unconscious mind, suddenly it pops up, and now I've got to get in here. I've got to tame this troubled mind. I have to tame this fear of mine. I have to tame what a terrible person I am. I have to tame my emptiness. Yes or no? Christ said, "Turn over a piece of wood, split a rock, there I am." He was alluding to the fact that you don't have to go looking for that which is the essence of love, the essence of understanding. It's with you all the time, but you're not looking in the right place because your mind has been directed to try to figure out how to tame the trouble that you have, failing to see that the trouble you have, you were the first one to define for yourself, that you are the one that has named that trouble. You are the one that struggles with what you have called a moment you don't want, failing to see that there is no moment you don't want without a level of consciousness that wants it. And to see even that much is to begin to enter into a completely different relationship with your world as you understand it. Now, that's the first part, the simple part. The second part is kind of simple too, but it requires that you pay attention so that you can put, how many of you are good enough at math to put 2 and 2 together? Ellen, what's 2 and 2? She says, I'm not sure, 4? We all cave in under pressure, don't we? What happens when a striker hits a stone? What happens? I'll show you. What happens? There's a spark. A spark. Now, neither the flint nor the striker by themselves create the condition. There's no spark in the striker. Is there? Come on. Is there a spark? Anybody see a spark? I could wave this till the cows come home and there'd be no spark. Yes or no? Well, what about the flint? Is there a spark in the flint? Come on. Come on. Spark. I could do that until the cows come home, and would there be a spark? So there's no spark in the striker, and there's no spark in the flint. And yet, when you put them together, something comes out of the relationship between what is actively working and that which it is working against. Something active, something passive. Neither one of them contain the third element, the new creation, that which is revealed as being potential in their makeup is revealed. The spark is potential inside of the striker and the flint, but without that which puts them together, there is no spark whatsoever. Everybody understanding that much? Now, that spark goes on to do what? The spark goes into some kind of kindling. Does the spark have the fire in it? Well, what about the kindling? Does the kindling have the fire in it? Well, where in the name of God does the fire come from? The exact same relationship as the striker and the flint. The fire is born out of a relationship between two elements, one active and one passive, that contain within themselves the potential for a flame. So you can begin to see, if I'm making this clear at all, that these sparks and these fires are an expression of a temporary relationship between two seemingly disparate conditions. Simple enough so far? Now, if you change any of these things, like here's my napkin. Come on, baby. Come on. Am I going to get a spark between my napkin and the flint? Why? I get it here. Come on. Why can't I get a spark between the napkin and the flint? Because the napkin doesn't have the quality in it necessary to interact with this flint to produce what is potential when the two of them are brought together, but you separate them as they are naturally separated, and there's no spark. So the spark only exists for as long as these two elements are interacting. As long as a potential active and a potential passive are present together and something brings them together, you get something that otherwise you can't get. Everybody's still tracking with me so far. Not that complicated, right? Now, is there anything personal in that spark? Well, somebody may be going, God, Guy, you should be wearing goggles. Or my own mindset, I'm cluttering my desk with the sand from my... No, this is that spark. how do I say this to you in different ways? The spark doesn't live long enough to be personal. It is a momentary expression of a relationship between seemingly disparate forces that when integrated, when intersecting each other, produce something that is uncommon to either and yet a potential expression of their experience together. Now, what does that tell us? How many of you are ever irritated? So here's me. I'm not thinking that I'm irritated. I'm eating my curds and whey, and then along comes what? A spider. Irritation. I am irritated. Now, that flame, that sizzling inside of you, does it exist without what strikes it? Does is the striker the source of the irritation? Is this the source of the spark? Are you still following me? This isn't the source of the spark, but when you bring it together with something that contains a similar or corresponding element, you get a spark. So that when you're around somebody that's irritating, that person isn't the source of the irritation. They are striking something in another substance that produces in that substance a potential that's in that substance to suddenly go flame on. But how long does that flame linger on? How long does that spark linger? It doesn't linger at all, but what about the irritation? It just goes on, and not only does it go on, but the irritation becomes the flame that ignites problems in your relationships where you're so sure that others have done to you what you blame them for, that it never occurs to you that without something to be struck by something that strikes it, there is no such experience. That's the key word. There is no such experience of that irritation. That the irritation is the appearance of a relationship between two items that ordinarily have no corresponding relationship until something brings them together, and then suddenly pain. Understanding me? So, neither of these is responsible for what they manifest. Yes or no? Then why are you responsible for what manifests in me? Why do I look at you and say, you set me on fire? When these two are brought together and it makes a spark, is the spark good or bad? The spark is neither good or bad. It is an expression of a relationship between two forces. So someone might say, I'm terrified of sparks. Does their terror of the spark make the spark bad? Or is the badness of the spark inherent in their conditioned consciousness that sees it that way? That's where the trouble is, isn't it? What about people? I love sparks. I love sparklers. Remember sparklers? Remember how great they were? You were a kid, and then you got to be like 48, and then this is a pretty big disappointment, this sparkling thing. So the love of a spark isn't the spark itself, is it? The love of the spark, the attraction to the sparkle, belongs to the consciousness conditioned to be attracted to that. So the spark is neither good or bad. It neither attracts nor creates resistance. It's just a manifestation of a relationship between opposing forces. And they're not actually even opposing, but we use that word because we see that there has to be a friction in order to create that spark. Yes or no? So the moment of their interaction This is where you have to stretch a little bit. The moment of that interaction in a world, a micro world, we can see that spark just happens. It's there, and then it's not there. But what about in my world? When I'm driving down the street and the thought comes about my health. You understand that, don't you? I didn't bring up the thought that scares me. Do you think that you bring up thoughts that scare you? Do you? Oh, of course. Why would I scare myself? But yet, I almost did what was that cartoon character, that dog? Scooby-Doo. I almost did a Scooby-Doo. And yet, boom, something strikes. And I think that what strikes me is the condition I've imagined. When it isn't the condition I've imagined that strikes me, my own imagination connected to the conditioned fear of what I'm thinking about strikes the part of me that is already afraid of it. And the next thing I know, I'm on flame. I'm afraid full of fire, full of anger, full of greed, full of hatred. Now, that spark, we can understand it doesn't exist unless two things are brought together, yes? And we also understand that the two things that are brought together, that they are brought together, and in that moment, in that split second, when that which is celestial intersects what is celestial itself, or that which is planetary, in that split second of that intersection, something new is created that isn't the continuation of either one of them, but something new born out of their interaction. Please? And is what is born out of their interaction personal? Or is it as impersonal as the moment when they met? Which is it? It's impersonal. Are you being able to put this together? So neither one of these is responsible for what is manifested when they're brought together. Yes or no? Imagine this going, I hate that striker. Be like a family dinner. I hate that striker. The striker is impersonal. It has no quality in and of itself other than what is attributed to it when that which it creates is named by what it has struck. Still? So we can see here, and this is the kind of the lift I have. So I get that at a microcosmic level. I kind of get it. I could sit here and watch you do that all day, and I got this business about this work. But what about at a macrocosmic level? What about when it comes to the creation of existence itself as a ceaseless revelation of something greater than itself coming together in an instant of an endless big bang, where out of that relationship between these opposing forces, something that is created from them but is neither one of them, that is greater than in one respect, is born. Our present level of consciousness does not understand the ceaseless experience of itself as the ground of a divine matrix that endlessly is registering that relationship. We know nothing about the appearance and disappearance of an experience. There's an experience when you see the spark, isn't there? But my mind names the spark. It wants the spark. It doesn't like the spark. It has 1,000 different things to say to itself about the spark. And the spark that the mind is talking to itself about disappeared the moment that those two forces met. The spark, does the spark remain? Well, when somebody sets you off, does something remain? I'm trying to show you is something about this consciousness that is not clear to us at all. That there is the expression of the moment, and this expression, the way we are, it sees the disturbance, as separate from itself. Imagine if you could, this is you striker. I see that spark, I see that anger, I see that greed, I see that fear, I see that emptiness. I see it as separate from myself. Don't you? Yes or no? Is it separate from yourself? It isn't separate from yourself. But is it yourself? No. At that level, no. But at another level, yes. Because it is what? It is revealing something in this striker, in this flint, that the flint doesn't know it has. Flint doesn't know that all it can do is that. You don't know that all you can do is identify with the spark. But you and I are a divine flint. Meaning that within this nature is an absolute, if I could strike this and every time I strike it, it would throw out a different color, that'd be cool. But it would be a good representation of the fact that unlike the flint that can only do that, when something touches us, when some active force comes and touches us, it brings up red, green, blue, black, white, every color imaginable, including colors that aren't visible with the eye. Meaning that it's drawing out of this nature some of the characteristics and qualities that are latent in the nature, but that the nature doesn't know exist within it. And that's the purpose of the striker. That's the purpose of the divine touch, is to reveal to the unconscious nature the qualities and characters that sit latent within it, that it doesn't know are there, that it has no experience with, save for what? When some color appears that it doesn't want, I have conflict with the color as if the condition's responsible for my hatred of that moment. Everybody still? So what happens? I'm sitting at home and suddenly I'm awash with whatever, worry, doubt, fear, name it. And what happens in the moment? What happens inside of me? Here's that. I have an experience, don't I? There is an experience of the relationship between the two forces. Now, that experience, we know, is impersonal. Don't we know that? But is it impersonal to us? No. No. Now I'm some other cartoon character. No, it's not impersonal. Suddenly it becomes incredibly personal. It should blow your mind that all of your suffering is because you love to make things personal. I mean, what a contradiction that is, isn't it? That the very thing that I personify, meaning that I identify with and call myself, the very thing that I personify, I hate because it's painful. So the minute that happens, what happens inside of us? I'll show you. I'm out to dinner with my Uncle Fester. And he says something. Now, I may not show it, and most of us don't because that's part of our conditioning, but suddenly there's an entire flame inside of me. Now, can something be made into a flame unless that kindling has the potential for that? Now, here's a spark that's impersonal. We get that. It's a momentary experience, born of inner relationship, and now I'm on fire. And what happens the minute that the spark becomes something other than itself? How does the spark of a moment become a monster? Because in that split second, I need to know what it is that has disturbed me. I need to know. because I'm on fire. Look, I don't think to myself that I couldn't be on fire unless I had kindling. Maybe that's why family relationships, KIN-DLING, kindling. I couldn't be on fire unless there was something potentially flammable. Now, do you think do you walk around as a potentially flammable human being? Or are you suddenly always shocked by the amount of heat that come up in your body when things don't go right? So here I am, and suddenly I'm on fire. Why? I need, in that moment, something has been disturbed. I have to understand it if I'm going to reestablish my sense of self, my security. I have to get this into a place where I not only describe the event, but I can't separate the description of what's wrong with you from what I already know about you. Can I? So this consciousness already knows the moment that it names the disturbance, what the disturbance is, and not only what the disturbance is, but what else? What to do about it. Because now I can, that same consciousness, bring in everything. Bring in why you are the way you are, why you've always acted that way, how I've been here, I've had this pain for so many years. When am I ever going to be free from it? Please, Buddha, help me tame my mind. Please, Christ, enlighten me and bring me out of this darkness. All of this sudden upwelling of what we would call prayer, which isn't prayer at all. It's resistance to the revelation that this consciousness is being given of itself, because it can't stand seeing itself other than as it imagines itself being. And so the mind does what? It starts to analyze, think about it. And why is it analyzing, thinking about it? What's it doing as it's analyzing it? Listen to this. It is reducing it and reducing it and reducing it into something that is actually irreducible when it occurs. The experience of the moment is irreducible. You can't change what causes it, and you can't change what comes out of it until you understand it's not your job to change what comes out of that experience. Your task is to let the experience reveal to you the content of this consciousness that resists anything that it doesn't want. Please? So I give it a name. The moment I give it a name, guess who else is? Guess who's in the? Can I give an experience a name without being now a participant in the experience that I'm naming? I can't, can I? They're the same, aren't they? So now suddenly, that which I'm not, I'm the awareness of the experience. That's what I am. But suddenly the awareness of the experience becomes the awareness of what that consciousness blames on the experience. And the minute it blames it, that does what? It goes out. It's got a preconditioned response, yes or no? Don't see, you're not, I know this is going to be shocking to you. You suffer unconsciously too long and too much without being willing to start seeing, following the tracks of your own thoughts, your own mind. It's extraordinary. It can't wait to prove from my past and my resistance to the pain that this pain is something I'm always going to live with it. And the next thing you know, that little spark of an experience that's intended to show you the proclivity of this unconscious nature to cause pain for itself, it turns it into a fire. And then the world is at war, just as you're at war with yourself. Please, do you see this? I got to keep going. Bring up the second key lesson, if you will. We don't understand what it means to experience life as it is because we don't know what life is as it is. We don't know. We don't understand what it means to experience life as it is. The experience of life as it is what? Please. Something acts. I may have struck this in. Something acts, something is acted on, and something comes out of that relationship. That's the experience of life. This is impersonal. This is impersonal. That's impersonal. And yet, never is one more filled with an experience than when they allow the experience of the moment as it is to reveal the consciousness having that experience. Because one is born and one dies in the exact same moment. To even suspect that what I've showed you, these insights are true, does several things at once. First, it helps explain how unaware we are. One day you'll be shocked at how complicit you have been in your own suffering. You will. And it's required. You can't escape it. For the longest time you have lived believing that every time you run into a moment you don't want, into a relationship that's troublesome to you, that your responsibility is to ferret out exactly what has caused that, and then having determined what has caused that, to change or control the circumstances that you blame for it. And your whole life is spent that way. Every last breath that you take, an attempt to escape something that can't be escaped, which is an unconscious nature that is making personal all of a life that is impersonal in its nature. Now let's bring ourselves back down to earth a little bit before we get into our special writing. Haven't you ever wondered how it is that you can be merrily down the road, and then one little thing takes place, and it's basically the same misery that you have had for 1,000 years? Yes or no? And that misery that I am resisting, the misery, I don't know how far I can go with you. Can I resist this spark? Can I resist it? Can this spark, which lasts in one respect for something so short, but if you see it in the big picture, it is an endless spark. Can I take that spark and understand that that moment has only the quality of experience, not my experience, just the quality of an experience. Look, when you see beauty, long before you go, oh, look at how beautiful that is, long before that happens, there's just the experience of it. Because the observer and the observed are not apart from each other. They are brought together, and in their union of what is active and passive, it is discovered that they've never been apart from each other, and that same moment, that's what beauty is. Beauty is love. Beauty is the endless expression of love. Love being the endless expression of the soul united with the spirit that reveals the spark that shows the soul and spirit the content of itself. So every last one of those moments, though I don't see it, when I run into a moment I don't want, I don't believe for a split second that I'm involved in that landscape. Do you? No, I'm not involved in it. I don't want it. And yet I'm trying to show you what can essentially be called the quantum collapse of possibilities. There is no separate moment that exists, no painful moment for sure, that exists without thought collapsing all of the possibilities. Thought is the collapse of possibility, not the fulfillment of it. You don't experience, how do I say this? You can't experience the spark and held it. You experience your reaction to the spark. The spark is here and gone, but my mind clings to it. My eyes hold the image. My ears remember, so that in that moment the spark is something that is absolutely there and not there. This gets into deep physics. Light is there and it's not. You can't see light, and yet everything that you see is made of light. You think you see the cause of your pain. In fact, you're sure of it. And I'm saying that you don't see the cause of pain. What you see is the momentary expression of something that is potential in the soul. The soul is created to understand and experience infinite pain. infinite pain. Because it is part of infinite love. It is part of infinite compassion. It is part of infinite patience. But every time something touches a little too deep the core of whatever this consciousness is, it goes, no, I don't want that. And in that moment, you suffer uselessly what was intended to help you understand your capacity to bear all things. You know why you're created to bear all things? Because there's no separate self bearing anything. There is the divine expressing and experiencing the quality and content of itself, including the birth and death of itself endlessly. Are we still working? So there's no such thing as a painful moment in time until it's collapsed into a thought. And it can't be collapsed into a thought until there's a thinker that believes it's separate from the condition it's thinking about. Still with me? What is this temporary sense of self? What is this temporary I? How many of you suffer? Suffer in the morning. I know you do. It's the collapse of possibilities. And in the strange twist of things, in the collapse of possibilities, the very nature that has collapsed everything into a single thought so it knows what it is and who it is and what to do, the very nature that has collapsed everything into that single possibility then derives its possibilities from its conclusion. I'll always be like this. Well, I won't because I'm going to Spain. Endlessly running. Is it easy to not run? No, it's hell not to run. It's so painful to sit and experience who and what you are because you don't understand the nature of that pain yet. So you push against it instead of recognizing that if you left things as they are intended to be, you would see it appear, you'd understand something about the potential of your soul, and then the potential would disappear with the condition that produced it, and you would be a liberated human being, no longer identified with every experience that passes through you. So I have a special writing, and I need to spend time on it with you before I get to the exercise. This whole talk is born of this one special writing. Now let's see if we can read it, contemplate it, God willing. You don't just dismiss this as another movie you went to. It's called Enter the Divine Flow of the Unknowable Life. This is a as above, so below writing. As within, so without. Sunrise, sunset, midnight. Where does one begin and the other end? Where and when does one turn into the other? Don't get ahead. When does sunrise turn into sunset? Anybody tell me? Yeah, but you'll watch your clock. You know, I can't eat until 5. When does sunrise turn into sunset? When does sunset turn into midnight? When does the dawn turn into the darkest hour? Please, somebody tell me. Well, see, you're awfully quiet now, but you know when something good turns into something bad, don't you? You know when a good feeling becomes an unwanted feeling, don't you? Where does one begin and the other end? Where does one turn into the other? The light itself is constant. It's the earth that's moving, creating the illusion that light turns into darkness and darkness becomes light. Are you able to get that much? The light's constant. There's never not light. But we're in a relationship with that light on a planet that as it turns and goes on its axis, creates the illusion of night and day. As the earth turns, it seems like things get dark, and then it turns as they get light. But is the light ever not there? But what about for me? Next part. The correlation between sunrise, sunset, and midnight. The new hope and ebbing faith, sorrow over loss. a ceaseless parade of new beginnings and the inevitable storms that march in lockstep only to rain on them. Where and when does one turn into the other? Trying to draw a parallel, right? We know that the sunrise doesn't turn into midnight. We know that something is turning and creating the illusion that this light is going through these changes. But what about when it comes to the new hope? I'm going somewhere, something great happened, I've got this, I've got that. And then out of that, the next thing that comes is an ebbing faith, because in time, as things turn, I begin to lose hope in the thing that was giving me hope the moment before, or I expire that hope, because how many times can you go eat something that cost $1,000? And then out of that ebbing faith, what happens? Sorrow. God, who am I? All I know myself is through where I go and what I do and what I have. That's the extent of my identity. And that's why I always have to recreate through the next hope. I have to keep kindling that flame that I call myself. But it keeps going out. When and where does one turn into the other? When and where does hope turn into sorrow? Well, you and I say, well, when this did that and you did that, then this hope, this pleasure turns into a pain. We say that, don't we? I go back to what was in the first paragraph. The light of awareness is constant. We know the light is constant, right? From the first part, yes or no? So it's an illusion that things turn darker and darker and then pitch black. It's just the world turning, and it's the way we read that moment. It's the same thing when it comes to the way we read these moments in our life. The light of awareness is constant. It is the mind that is moving. The light of awareness is constant. It's the mind that's moving, creating an imagined sense of self that, for fear of being carried away by its own wild reactions, then struggles in vain to free itself from being imprisoned by what? By the very name it gave to that unknowable, unknown moment of life. You're never imprisoned by anything other than what you identify with having named the moment. That's your captivity. There is none other. And liberation is the realization of that, not acting against it, but seeing the proclivity of this unconscious nature to constantly bring everything that's possible to turn these two active and passive forces, the will of heaven and the will of earth, meant to create something new, a new birth, the light of the world that lives in you, to bring that about, so that in the light of that nature that we can see, little by little, we begin to understand what a mistake it is. Every time something moves through me, the first thing I do and the last thing I do is I get a hold of whatever it is, I figure out what to do about it, and then I can spend my life controlling, changing, or hating myself, judging myself for my inability to change my life. Can you see this with me? I'm going to read something to you now. Well, what do I make of this? What do I make of all this? I heard quite a bit. Did you hear quite a bit? Tried to show you quite a bit. Okay, all right, I kind of get it. There's something in this nature that can't wait when life, when the divine creates the revelation of some aspect of itself. That's what revelation is. Revelation is nothing other than the divine giving a little peek. Look at this. Look at this. And you get a little peek of something, and instead of understanding, wow, I've just been given access to something that I never knew. Instead of that, I don't want to know that. I'm not interested in this at all. Please make it go away. Please make what go away? The experience I've given myself after naming the condition that was without a name. Can you see that experience is without a name? Did I get that far, yes or no? This is called The Parable of the Empty Boat by Chuang Tzu. Nice deep breath. You'll see how it connects. He who rules men lives in confusion. He who is ruled by men lives in sorrow. Yao, therefore, desired neither to influence, this is a story that Lao Tzu is telling about a man, Yao, therefore desired neither to influence others nor to be influenced by them, having understood. And having been free of being influenced by them, to be free of the confusion that comes when you're always trying to clarify who and what others should do and be, including yourself. I'm adding that. Therefore, to live, and free of sorrow is to live with Tao in the land of the great void. Now, we don't get this idea, to live with the Tao in the land of the great void. You can sit and chatter like a monkey till the cow comes home. It's not a word. Then he goes on. If a man is crossing a river and an empty boat collides with his own skiff, even though he be a bad-tempered man, he will not become very angry. But if he sees a man in the boat, he will shout at him, "Stay clear!" And if the shout isn't heard, he'll get angrier still and shout louder and even begin cursing. And all because there is somebody in the boat. Yet if the boat were empty, he'd not be shouting and he wouldn't be angry. If you can empty your own boat crossing the river of the world, no one will oppose you, and I add this, including yourself. And no one will seek to harm you, including yourself. I've just described to you what it means to empty your boat. The boat's actually empty. It's already empty. And in that emptiness, perfectly full of everything that is being revealed by the divine, acting upon the vine of itself, the branch of itself, to produce the fruit of revelation, fruit of discovery, and the fruit of liberation when a person starts to recognize at long last how mistaken I have been. I can't wait to give a name to something so I can feel the good or the bad in the name and then spend my life trying to clear that name or get rid of the conditions I blame for it. How am I to empty? Okay, so how do I empty the boat? Do you get the idea? I need to empty the boat, yes or no? Aren't you mad with every skiff, every self, every person that bumps into you if they're not bringing you flowers, and even if that, of course I get upset. But I would have a completely different reaction if I saw that there was no one in that boat, wouldn't I? See, you attribute to others the negative qualities that you alone know are true about yourself. Otherwise, you couldn't attribute them to people. And that's what you resist. That's what bumps into you is yourself. But if you empty the boat, meaning if you start to see the task is what? Here's the exercise, besides the idea of empty the boat, a little too esoteric. See that what you fill the moment with is what the moment is filled with. See that what you fill the moment with is what the moment is filled with. The moment itself is filled with nothing any more than a river has a point in time where it's filled with itself. It's always changing, always passing, but there's no point in that river where the river isn't something new. And it's something new because there's always something acting on it and producing a change in it. And the change in it is constantly reflected through its movement. That's one of the appealing aspects of a river. You are the river. You like looking at rivers, don't you? Yes or no? Like looking at sequoias? Yes or no? How about looking at that seething human being next to you? A completely different reaction, isn't there? Because this character, this quality that I attribute to the ocean, to the sky, to the tree, all I'm doing is having a momentary interrelationship between something that is acting to create an impression and the realization of that impression, which is experience. Suddenly there's an experience. and the observer and the observed are sitting there, and I love this moment. I want to spend all my time in this moment, which incidentally you can't. Because then you're going to go try to create, you're going to go plant sequoias in your backyard. Spend $1,000 million to produce the sound of a river. Insane human beings. See that what you fill the moment with is what the moment is filled with. And the more that you can become of that relationship, the more you will want to leave the moment empty of you. Now, are you going to be able to do that? How many think you can just empty the moment of yourself just like that? It's impossible, isn't it? But see, you can learn to fall in love with a new order of understanding that shows you in this awareness. The light is always there. The awareness is always there. You can start to watch this movement take place. And it's the most difficult. Look, this is not children's, this isn't play stuff. Christ said, lose your life to gain it. This is the real deal. Only the difference is, for whatever reason, and I have no idea how it came to pass, I'm able to explain to you what it means to lose your life, that begins with seeing you have no life to begin with. Because what you call your life now is the endless analysis of an experience that this unconscious nature produces so it can carry itself through time, constantly in pain and seeking pleasure to relieve itself with. You get that? That opens up. I can't make that open up in you. Nobody can. Christ himself couldn't open it up in you. But you need to be open to the understanding that allows you to start recognizing, you know what? This is true. I'm at home by the grace of God. For most of us, I've got decent clothes. I can eat decent food. I live in a decent place, but something is never happy. It wants something else. It wants to go someplace. It can't stand experiencing itself when there's nothing that it can name that experience other than what it doesn't want. Leave the experience alone. It'll appear, it'll disappear, and when it does, so will the person that embraces or resists it. And when the person that embraces or resists the appearance of an experience disappears, now suddenly you're just in this movement of experience, this divine experience that is the product of revelation. Yes? Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our class. We're glad you're back joining us. A few quick announcements before we get started with Guy. First of all, I think most of you are aware, but if you're not, we are a nonprofit organization, and we rely on generous donations from people like you to continue keeping these free classes going. So if you're able, we do appreciate anything you can give. You can go to guyfinley.org/donate to donate to support and keep these classes going. Secondly, if you're unaware and you'd like to receive a text reminder 15 minutes prior to class, you can also go to guyfinley.org/register, and that will text you 15 minutes before class. So, oh, it is reminder? Yes. Reminder. I got register. Reminder to receive those. And we're going to go now to our Q&A with Guy. If you'd like to speak to Guy directly and you're on either Facebook or YouTube, you can always go to our GoToWebinar platform and talk to him directly. And you do that by going to guyfinley.org/class. And you can just sign in quickly and talk to Guy directly. So if you're on the other platforms, you can just write in the chat box, write a question in the question or chat area in GoToWebinar, or on YouTube in the chat box, on Facebook in the chat box, and we will read your questions. So I think that's it, and we'll go ahead and get started. Our first question.
No.
Guy has a comment.
Bring up the first key lesson, will you? Okay. No worries. There it is. I started this material with this key lesson. I'm going to read it to you again and then urge you to try and let this concise lesson correlate with all the content you were given over the last hour, because this is the summary. Words are rocks in the stream of consciousness. No name is the experience it seems to define. Experience, like the flow of a river, is a silent, wordless movement. We can either live in and from the conditioned experience of the word, or in the timeless awareness of experience itself. Live in and from the conditioned experience of a word. Just the name of some person that you have as an enemy will turn you into a wave of anger. Just the name of a disease will frighten you. Just the name of a food or a place will open you up to temptation and dissatisfaction with where you are. Just a name. And then you experience the identification with that name without knowing that the experience is the product of a consciousness reincarnating itself so that it can be a captive of what it doesn't want. Or in the timeless awareness of experience itself. The timeless awareness of experience itself. That's actually what double attention is in one respect. The timeless awareness of experience itself. No one there having an experience, but someone there relishing in, realizing, being informed, educated through the endless appearance of the revelation of the content of their soul, of this consciousness. Not your soul, not my soul, the soul. Now.
Okay, our first question comes in from Dean. Hi, Guy and school. I am recently made homeless of my small apartment where I attend class remotely since 2015. My life's belongings are being held in a storage facility, and I am sheltering in a guest room here at my elderly mother's rental property. I have recently come to learn I may be on the spectrum. Unfortunately, I am overstimulated by extreme traffic noise and have become unwell in these past 5 months since losing my home. I'm hurting and I'm overwhelmed. The NDIS in Australia denied my house support despite knowing I live with a lifelong disability. In this life, I share nothing more is to thank you for being there throughout these years. I have shared from afar. You enriched my life, and the memories of this school will remain with me.
You know, when you live with despair for so long, and how that nature will turn every condition into the truth that just seems irrefutable. I'm irredeemable. This life is not worth living. And then the same nature that convinces you to name the experience then says, therefore, it's time to bring an end to the experience on this life, and let's get out of here. And you're listening to hell itself. Gosh, Dean, nobody can know directly what your experience has continued to be as a result of whatever this disability may be, but you mustn't strengthen the disability, Dean. Identification with what you don't want is strengthening the sense of self derived from it. That's the whole point of the talk. Can I bear to suffer the revelation of this consciousness instead of suffer what this consciousness tells me I can't escape? Because the only thing that I'm a captive of, Dean, the only thing you're a captive of, and again, it's a difficult road, Dean. Everybody here, although I will tell you to some extent, most human beings are giant hypochondriacs. I'm not saying you are. But a hypochondriac is somebody that makes something that isn't real into something that is. And then the more it becomes real to them, the more we resist it. And the more resist it, the more it's manifested. Because that's the quantum collapse of that thought. It creates out of a field of possibilities a total limitation. The individual that made that limitation for themselves believe that they can't escape when they're the creator of it. Fight for yourself, man. There isn't a day that goes by. You think that when someone's awakened, do you think that their life doesn't have a fight in it? Their awakening is because of the fight. But it's because they've learned something about the nature that fights. So they fight in a completely different way. That's what you have to learn to do. Because now you fight for a self that doesn't exist. But you can fight for a self that not only exists, but that has given you your existence. And in your victory, whatever little way it may come, you help every other human being on the planet. What do you think a truth school is? And then in your arrogance, and it's pure arrogance, you think, well, I don't have to study, I don't have to participate. I'm not going to be a piece of furniture in the room like all those other idiots. Your nature is your reward, and your nature is constantly being revealed to you by something that wants you to understand your nature can be transcended if you're willing to die to what you're identified with. Throw out that thought, Dean. Throw it out. Live to learn. There's no condition that a man or a woman can be put into. There is no condition that a man or a woman can be put into that can't be to their benefit when they understand that their benefit is for the benefit of all mankind in their willingness to suffer what is revealed in themselves that is the same source of suffering in all of humanity. Then you do something real with your life, as I'm trying to do, and as I assume everyone else wishes.
Okay, we have a hand up. We're going to go to Larry. Larry, you are unmuted. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Larry. You click the hand again, and you should be able to unmute on your end. If you want, Larry, go ahead and work with Kate behind the scenes, and we can help. There we go.
Okay.
You're unmuted,
All right.
Larry.
Okay, great. Took a little bit of engineering here, but I'm glad I got through. Hi, Guy. How you doing?
Hi, Larry.
Just wanted to say that the last two talks have been pretty revealing to me. I've been reading your books for a long time, studying and listening, and I've realized that I've been applying it to the wrong thing. I've been applying it to my idealistic self,
Yes, sir.
who I wanted to be.
Yes, sir.
And I realized it's not about that. It's about who I am, me, the real me, my nature.
Yes, sir.
And when I found that out, I said, well, wow, everything started to line up. I started to see myself in daily challenges with my nature. And that spark that happens just about at every corner I turn at. And I realized, wow, I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
I've been the guy who could read a book, get all the answers. I got the answers. Don't worry about it. If I don't know, I'll go find out.
Yes,
And
sir.
I realized that was
Exactly.
totally the wrong solution.
Yeah. That's very encouraging, Larry. I'm glad to hear from you. And I would just add something that came up in the chat, I think, on Friday, but I'm not sure it was. The student-led chat on Friday, they were talking about gratitude. And I tune into all the chats. I'm always behind the scene in case I have to jump in for some reason. But I would say this, that there is an inseparable relationship between the development of faith and the realization of gratitude. Because in the end, gratitude is always the sudden sense of liberation from something that I didn't know I was a captive of. The enhancement of a possibility that I had no idea could go beyond my present view of it. So that as I start to have, as you are having, these revelations, you all have your life, you do what you do. I come here, it's my responsibility. I'm obligated to do it. I can't imagine a life without revelation in it. What would a life be without being able to see something new? Not learn from a book, but maybe read something in a book, or as you just said, hear something in a couple talks, and suddenly a world that I didn't know I was a captive of, I recognize, oh my God, not only was I a captive of it, but I was identified with it and would fight to protect it. And now I don't have to protect it anymore. I'm so grateful I don't have to protect it. I'm so grateful.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm so grateful I don't have to struggle to keep that in place. I'm so grateful I can let it go. I don't have to always be prepared the way I think I do. I don't always have to have everything in its right place the way I think I do. I don't have to get someplace on time I'm so grateful. And I'm grateful to God, who himself never showed himself, but showed me the quality in myself that was keeping me from that awareness. And then the gratitude flows. And as gratitude flows, the faith that that process is unending opens up in you, and then you're well on your way. So good, Larry, and thanks for the opportunity to explain gratitude. On we go.
Okay, our next question comes from Annette. So if we lose ourselves with all our preferences, critiques, judgments, identity, then we can flow better and be present in the experience rather than fighting and trying to control things?
Hi, Annette. So I trust, Annette, that you were just listening to my conversation with Larry. And I was talking about gratitude and faith, but I would tie the conversation I had with him into the answer to your question. So what Larry was saying, and that I simply enhanced, meaning enlarged so that it could contain this idea of gratitude, is that Larry is beginning to be grateful for the fact that he has, through his work, begun to understand that gratitude is commensurate with emptying the boat. I looked at my own room of students and there's a bunch of blank stares, but meaning that I don't have to carry in this boat this knowledge, this knowledgeable person. I don't need him in the boat. I don't need this person who knows everything. I don't need this demanding. I don't need them in my boat. I always thought I had to have them in my boat because it was going to keep me safe from people that were going to bump into me. But then I realized the only thing I'm getting bumped into is by myself, that names everything that comes downstream that I don't want. So, Annette, we don't set out to lose ourselves. We set out to see that we're carrying something in the boat that is unnecessary. And the mind that becomes aware of what is unnecessary begins by itself through that awareness to dispel, to let go of, to drop, to get rid of without taking thought. That which it sees once believed was valuable, and now I see there's no value in this. You believe there's value in fear. You believe there's value in wishing that your life is other than it was. You believe there's value in being someone who's going to rise above the rest and they'll need you and become dependent on you. You believe there's value in creating dependency in people. And one day the whole boat has to be emptied because all of that belongs to a conditioned nature that you didn't even condition, and not even your own nature, but a personality that was developed to protect you from other boats. Then, Annette, it begins. My life flows in this circulation of experience because I'm not stopping every experience in order to derive an identity from it. Is that clear? On we go.
Susanna asks, when do we become aware and difficulties are solved? Our cynical minds say, well, it was a coincidence. Are there coincidences?
Hi, Susanna. I don't know about the students that I talk to, but I'm always grateful for your questions because what they do is they let us see if we're listening. I don't know who's listening and who's not. It's never meant anything to me anyway. I talk. I live to talk. If this mind, it says, as you've asked, when do we become aware and difficulties are solved? As if there's some relationship between the solving of a difficulty and me becoming aware. No, awareness is the end of identifying with difficulties. It's one movement, not an if, and, or but. It's not this and that. Awareness is the end of identifying with difficulties. Why? Because in my awareness, I can see there's something in me that can't wait to make somebody tense and special and important by how lonely, angry, empty I am. Can't wait for that. And so that mind looks all around and waits for, now listen, waits for, I don't have my striker. I have to do this. So here's my striker. I'm not going to go through the whole mishmash. Isn't there still a relationship between these two things, even if they're not touching? So just because there's emptiness in the moment doesn't mean that there's not a relationship between what is active and what is passive. It's just that in that moment, what's being revealed, what I'm aware of, is that there's no particular experience for me to identify with. You see, you're lovers of personal experience. You can't help it. That's how we grow up. We are conditioned to love personal experience. And that nature that loves personal experience doesn't give a hoot what the nature of that experience is. As long as it has the experience, it's happy. It's happy being angry. It's happy being happy. Because the happiness and the anger are attributes of a character that it's identified with, so it goes on. So all it wants to do is just go on. You're learning, if you are, and I trust you are, those of you who are faithful, that there's a completely different kind, an awareness of the experience instead of a self-derived from it. I hope that helps. Susanna, on we go. Patricia is at the mic.
I have a question. I'm Patricia.
Yes, you are.
Your answer just now to Susanna, your explanation. Is that why as we work and we don't identify with so much as we work on ourselves, the emptiness feels bigger and larger?
Yeah, because it's still something that I can identify with.
So we're just identifying with
Exactly. It doesn't care. It doesn't, look, first of all, if it were real emptiness, it would be empty. It's not real emptiness. It's an emptiness that is filled with everything that you fear about not being someone making progress or producing something. It's a lie. The whole thing's a machination of an automaton. That's what it does. You know how you have a coffee maker? You put coffee in, a little cinnamon on your stuff, and you put it in there and get your coffee? Yeah? Your mind makes conflict.
A question from Roy, and please raise your hand online or write in a question into a chat area, and we'll be happy to answer it for you now. Roy says, one feels lonely. They choose this time to not resist the feeling. Ideally, what then is on the other side of loneliness?
What would have happened if John Muir, a great naturalist, explorer, if he came to a certain set of mountains and he said, I wonder what's on the other side of those mountains, because I'm not going. It's too tall, it's too deep, it's too craggy, it's too cold, it's too hot. Not me. Maybe someone else will go and then explain to me what they saw. Would he have become the beautiful individual that he became? Or did he become beautiful because all of the facets of his soul were rounded out through relationship he had with nature and his understanding of the experience of himself as not separate from the nature he then sought to protect because he understood the correspondence? I don't see, have we announced, isn't this coming Wednesday deep dive? Is someone going to announce that? You say you just did. It's like a Progressive insurance commercial. I want it announced, okay? So it won't be this Wednesday. Maybe next Sunday or Insight Timer, Roy. I'm going to talk about. No, I can't do an Insight Timer. It have to be Sunday because I need images to show you that we, without knowing it, and not consciously so, but as a result of a level of self that is terrified of anything that it can't name and imagine it controls, we live literally in a two-dimensional life. Literally in a two-dimensional life. And so I'm going to help you see that already within you is a third and fourth dimension. We won't talk about a fifth dimension yet. Already within you are the dimensions of the divine. You're created as an expression, a mirror of those dimensions, but we don't see ourselves in the mirror of the divine. We see ourselves in the mirror of thought, and thought is always two-dimensional, if that. On we go, if there's any further to go.
We do have a question coming in from Nick on YouTube, and then if anyone in the room would like to come up and talk, please go ahead and come on up. Nick says, it feels like as I lose the weight on my boat, it seems to grow from a tugboat to a cruise liner. It's like going from trying to help and control everything to setting sail on the open ocean.
Well, it's kind of the metaphor that threw me, because most of us don't have a tugboat, we have a ship of fools. An ocean liner filled with every passing personality characteristic that was ever developed by us dealing with conflict or seeking some kind of comfort. There's an eye for everything. The ship should be called Legion. You can't throw out the individual characters of Legion. You have to understand the creator of Legion. and the illusion of something that is a multiplicity, when in truth it is a single action of an unconscious nature set against itself. So the metaphor was a little confusing, but to lose weight on your boat, if you want to empty the boat, Nick, then yes, the more the empty. So now I'll go back with you, Nick, now. Look, this is something that I say to you, not so that you can identify with it and then imagine this and then, like Larry was saying, then become someone who knows. I say this to you because if you've seen any of what we've described and from your own work, you can recognize it. Nick is saying that as I empty the boat, it just seems as if the ocean, the sail on the ocean becomes more effortless. Why does it become more effortless? Because I'm not sitting there guiding the boat through the currents of life. You believe you have to set yourself up for this current and avoid that current. Do you not? Do you know that you can't set yourself up to love this current without hating the current that counters it? You can't serve two masters. You can't serve two currents. Otherwise, you'll end up on the rocks. Thank you very much. Forgive me, Christ.
All right, we have a comment from Frida. Hello, Guy. For a long time, I have felt a sense of nothing. Nothing is beautiful, nothing is ugly. But it is not an emptiness. I can't really be happy about anything, but not unhappy either. Is it also something to look at? I hope you understand something. Greetings.
I hope I understand something too. You're exactly where you need to be. If what I've described to you is true, and I know that it is, and I'll spend what years I have left of this life diving deeper into the contemplation and experience of this relationship that exists, this endlessly open, fully potential field of energy that is not out there. You and I are, if you want to use the word, little dewdrops on Indira's web, little aspects of an entirety that can see the entirety in ourselves, because everything that we see is a reflection of the whole of ourselves. And to understand that to any degree at all does two things at once. First, it begins to make this experience of, I got it, oh, this is great, yes, I can count on this, I'm going there, begins to make all of that so stupid. I shouldn't have said it that way, because I know some of you can't help yourselves, but it's stupid. Identification is an act of stupidity. How's that for a QP? It's an act of stupidity. Why? Because it's done by a consciousness that is ignorant of what it is doing to itself, because everything it gives itself to look forward to, it lives in fear that something will challenge it. That's the nature of it. And as all of that begins to, as the wheat is separated from the chaff, Frida, you just start to understand, I can't give myself to the movement of this fear. Because the fear doesn't exist apart from something in me that in the moment these two moments met, I can't give myself to this anxiety. Yeah. Be patient with me, everybody. Time. The inexorable movement of an existence that must keep continually harmonizing everything that is in time. Time, what it acts upon. So here comes time. I'm sitting at home and I remember I should be someplace, or I want to get something. I want to buy something. Here comes that thought, a movement of time, which, by the way, if you could understand, it moves in both directions at once. The only way we see life is time moving in one direction. Time does not move in one direction. Time moves in two directions. In fact, time isn't moving at all. It's the mind that's moving. Time doesn't move. Our experience of its movement, though, is only one direction. The fact is that here comes what I say is time, but it's not really time. It is the whole of this thing balancing itself, requiring that which is imbalanced to be brought into the harmony of the whole. So here comes something and it strikes, and it creates this spark. It creates the experience of something that is ostensibly, instantaneously resisting what it's acting on. But then what happens, just that there's a moment, and I see this, and instead of this just becoming an understanding of how wired and demanding and ambitious and hungry I am, instead of seeing that, instead all I see is, oh, I got to get there. I got to get there. That idea of getting someplace doesn't exist by itself. I'm here, this is acting on me, and suddenly, oh, I got to get there. Get where? What my mind named as required in order to resolve that which resolved itself the moment it appeared. I don't know if you could follow that, but that was an accurate description of anxiety. Time, I'm old, I'm dying, I've got to go someplace. Oh, I don't want that appointment. What's going to happen if this happens? What do you think the nature of that time is, other than thought collapsing a possibility into a painful scenario that then it resists so it can escape the creation of itself? So Frida, if I see that, how do I say this to you? It's not that I'm throwing things out of the boat. I just recognize that everything in the boat was an illusion to begin with. How many of you got lots of stuff in your boat? It's hard to row. But I can hire rowers, but no matter how many rowers I hire, the boat's still sinking. My life is going to end. Oh God, I've got to get someplace. Row your boat miserably. And then you start realizing everything that I'm trying to get to is in the boat, is an imagined place, a time of me. And so I don't have to get rid of stuff that's imagined in the boat, do I? I empty the boat by seeing the boat never had anything in it other than a false sense of self that requires something to be itself. And then the boat empties. And Frida, as the boat empties, what do you think happens to the nature that has dreamed the love boat? What do you think happens to the cruise? Suddenly you realize, I've never been on a cruise. Holy cow. I can't put anything more in the boat. That's my problem to begin with. But I also have very little left in the boat. Who am I without something in my boat? Do you understand the question? Empty the boat. Find out what's on the other side of the mountain. Empty the boat. And as you empty the boat, Frida, you'll start to see what you're going through is the natural outcome of you awakening to the futility of trying to empty the boat or trying to fill it. And then you keep a new metaphor. Tighten your seatbelt. Stay in the oven. Let everything sort itself out. You become the awareness of the experience, not someone having an experience that you're trying to be aware of its meaning.
Okay. That concludes our regular class, but please stay with us because we'd like some of the students might come up and talk. And I also want to remind you, as Guy mentioned, this Wednesday is our Deep Dive Wednesday class. And that's your opportunity to take something that you've read. Maybe it's something in the Bible you're struggling to interpret.
Maybe something you heard today.
Maybe something you heard today. Guy's writings, any master's writings that you would like a deeper dive into. Guy's understandings are definitely a deeper dive. And he'd be happy to answer those questions. So you go to guyfinley.org/contact and write that question in there. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to the room.
Hello, my name is Ellen, and I had an experience yesterday that just goes along so beautifully with what we were talking about. So yesterday morning, I went out for my walk, and it's a 2-mile walk. And when I get halfway through, I have to turn around and come back.
What a concept.
What a concept. And it's tricky for me because I have balance issues, and it's just, there's a curb, and it's always tricky. So yesterday I came to this point, and I don't know what happened. My attention must have slipped or something, and I found myself losing my balance, that like I could fall, which was very scary. And where this is, it's not in the place where there are a lot of people. So anyway, I did not want to fall. And I just watched as my body took control, and I started doing like one of these little dances as it went from one foot to another and started getting its balance back. And it did, and I didn't fall. And that moment was the spark, and that should have been the end of it, right? Well, as I was walking back, all these rocks started filling my mind and telling me, oh boy, if you had fallen, what would have happened? You know, you could have been lying there, and who would help you? And then, well, what if I'd broken my hip?
I think we get that part of the picture.
Yeah, I mean, I won't go into all of it.
But see, actually, Ellen, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Just that continuity. Cut her out. Get her out of the boat.
Okay, well, this is...
I know, but I have to stop you because we're all sinking with you.
Well, I was getting to the good part.
All right, get to the good part.
So while all of this was going on, there was another part of Ellen that was watching it in a different kind of way. And so I was just trying to create the picture of...
Yeah, we all had the picture. You know,
Yeah.
you had me at hello.
Okay. But it wasn't just that, is what I'm saying. There was this other thing going on. And for one thing, I thought it was funny that instead of patting myself on the back for having been so agile, it wanted to go into the fear of it.
It
And-
wanted to go into the sense of Ellen full of fear. Not just the fear.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen, it wanted to go deeper into Ellen. More of Ellen.
Right.
We want less of Ellen.
We want less. And the thing is, I could see the whole workings of my mind so much more clearly than I had before.
Yeah.
And I know that this is what it does all the time, and it's always trying to pull me in.
Yes.
And now I have seen through it.
You caught the devil behind the 12th tree.
I did. And this talk strengthened
Yes,
that understanding.
agreed. It was a long story, but it was worth it.
Hello, my name is Eric. A beautiful quote from Leo Tolstoy that I discovered 20 years ago, maybe. Something like, there's a lot more to it, but it's something like, it is impossible for a person to be placed in a condition that is contrary to his consciousness. I think he actually used the word conscience, but I think it applies to both. And part of that is because they're one thing. The condition and the consciousness
Yes,
are actually one thing.
yes.
They fit together like puzzle piece for revelation.
Yes.
And I went, for a couple of days, I went to the ocean, to continue the ocean metaphor. And I always feel pain when I look at the ocean. It's like, I think there's pain both ways. One, the bigness of it. But my mind is always trying to figure it out. Figure out the ocean. Like, describe it. It wants, including berating me for not, the observer is the observed. Well, why aren't you one with the ocean? You should be one with it. And there's the pain. Right there. There's part of the pain of my mind is sitting there trying to name it and trying to reduce the experience of it into something that it can understand.
Yeah.
But then there's also the pain of seeing that, which is another point. I can be one with the ocean when I experience the pure experience of myself.
Correct.
Because there's an ocean going on in here right now.
Does the ocean create a wave if there's no one there to ride it? Does it? No, they exist together. The mind wants to believe. The unconscious nature attributes divinity to itself. The fallen mind. And in its misattribution and the collapse of its facilities accordingly, it tries to find the universe in a thought because it believes it can have a thought that will hold the whole. But every time that mind takes thought, it separates itself out from the whole. And the suffering and the pain of that drives it to try to find another thought that will be more inclusive so that the sense of self can be enlarged accordingly. And he didn't bring it up, but I know it's there. Part of the pain isn't just the immensity of something that my mind wants to wrap itself around. Part of the pain of immensity is that I'm drawn to it. I want to be one with the immensity. And you are, except thought won't allow it.
My name is David. Yesterday, there was an experience for me of, I guess it could be called mild disgruntledness, or anyway, David didn't want to speak. He didn't want to speak to people as a result of this mild mood, whatever you want to call it, negativity of. And it went on for a few hours, maybe 4. And during that time, it was observed how he wanted to work out what was going on and either drop it or do something so that it would do something. This is what was observed, strategy. And he tried different strategies were tried to try and drop this mood. going against himself in different ways, etc. And then there's what you shared today about how there's a spark and then the rest is just David jumping on for the ride and keeping it going. So I'm looking at this experience yesterday in the light of what we've heard today and thinking, 4 hours, there's something going on there if that spark is not being allowed to go.
You think?
As quick.
I sit and resist and hate something for 4 hours, saying that I actually want to get rid of it? That's a contradiction. Except that I don't see the time I'm in. I don't see that I'm quite literally doing time. That's what thought is. Thought's time. And you do time because you still don't understand that God's life, the light, light itself is self-settling. We're all, you can't escape it. You're conditioned. You don't know how deep it runs. You're conditioned to not want anything that isn't part of your usual program. You're conditioned. So it feels natural to me to fight with something that isn't part of myself, of my plan. Because this disgruntledness, I'm not disgruntled, I'm David. So you fight with something that if you weren't fighting with it, you would suffer the awareness of a certain aspect of your character, of your nature. You'd watch it come and you'd watch it go. It's really quite that simple. You'd watch it come and you'd watch it go. Maybe you'd watch how something and you won't let it go, but you can't see how you won't let it go if you're struggling to do so. Then you can't see the more you struggle, the more resist, the more the body takes on all the intonations. Literally the body, the wavelength of the body starts becoming synchronized with the wavelength of those negative states. And now you have a disharmony with disharmony. You're in scale. Then the body is consumed in that resistance, filled with resistance. Then the body not wanting to experience it, not just the mind, the body says, well, the answer to this is go eat or go to sleep or do anything to get rid of this pain.
Right.
You can't get rid of it. You can only die to it. The only way you die to it is to understand it.
Thank you for this talk today.
You're welcome, David. Be of good cheer. Be of good cheer. It doesn't mean that you're cheery. Cheery people are kind of sickening, actually. But there's a silent cheeriness. There's a deep kind of cheeriness where you understand from your work, this is hell. But there's no experience of hell without some corresponding, as Eric said, some corresponding character in this consciousness that is the expression of it. When does heaven begin and hell end? Or is the divine constant?
Good morning. My name is Kate. This is just one of those mornings where I feel so much kind of being absorbed and coming in and connecting with things that are not seen within myself, but they're there and they're brought to life, and I just am really appreciative.
I'm grateful to be alive.
I'm grateful to be alive. You know what? That's perfect. Okay, I'm going to connect that, actually. Eric and I like to watch old episodes of the show Frasier. And if you've seen it, the character Frasier Crane is a radio show host. And we watched an episode recently where he invited his fan club to come over to his home. And he was, prepared food for 100 people, and 3 people show up. His fan club of 3 show up, and
That's my life story, Kate.
there's a connection there. And they're all nerds. And one of them, as soon as he opens, Fraser opens the door and welcomes him. He's this little guy. He has a camera, and he immediately snaps the camera right in Fraser's face and goes, "This is great. This is great." And he's walking around the whole apartment just snapping pictures. "This is great. This is great." Okay, this is what I feel like. There's something in Kate that, even just, again, with everyone that's come up and said something, and I'll just, David, because he was the last one that spoke, I can feel like that there's something in me that just won't meet the moment purely, openly, in real time, that it's snapping a picture, and it's either saying, "This is great," or "This is horrible." And so it's just this constant meeting of people and situations, and it doesn't even matter. Like Eric mentioned, we went to the ocean, and we have a little camper van, and I mean, even just being in this tiny little kitchen cooking dinner and comparing it to what it's like to cook dinner at my own home so freely, and then when you're in this tiny little space and trying to do it, and there's something that's not enjoying the moment and getting in the way, saying, "This is terrible." But this work is what would we do without the ability to use those moments to stand in front of the ocean, literally, as Eric talked about, or to stand in that moment in my tiny little camper kitchen and meet it as wholly as I can. Sometimes I'm frustrated that I don't get the words right.
The feeling's right, Kate.
Yeah.
Words will follow.
Guy said in the talk, "The soul is created to understand and experience infinite pain." And I want to connect that to everything I'm saying, to stand in the moment and experience, and it's really infinite growth. It's the pain of growth, the pain of being brought into real life. The soul is created to understand and experience infinite pain. I mean, it's interesting that we associate pain with something bad.
Exactly.
And yet, it's literally it's the pain of being brought into, of finding yourself within life as a part of this bigger, broader life.
In my pain is your mercy made perfect. In my weakness, thy strength made perfect. In my pain is your mercy made perfect. Then I see a much bigger picture, and I'm not so resistant anymore. I allow the experience. I watch the demanding mind. Here I've been planning my whole life. I got a camper. I can take my cats. I can take Eric, put him in the bunk someplace, and just go. And then I get there, and I'm in hell because I don't have that one cupboard that I can get to easily, and I'm only using a stupid camp stove when I'm trying to make pasta and pizza, and I can't. I mean, then you see, you know what, Jesus, I'm a living demand machine. God help me. And that's where the impression becomes vital and positive, as opposed to me hating the situation and believing what? Eric, we need a bigger camper, bud. We need one of those 200 grand, 50-pound, 1,000 moving Schmendrixes.
We saw a lot of those, believe me. We're both like, no! Who in their right mind would try to drive one of those?
No, there's no end. There's no end to mammon.
Yeah, there's more I could say, but that's good enough.
You shall be the last.
Hello, my name is Heidi, and this will go along with what Kate shared. And a great talk today. When you see a child bright and young and fresh, you know that they're developing. Their eyes, their ears, their mind, their heart, and that it takes time. And there's a natural patience for that. But with one another, with grown-ups, with my parents, with people that are my age or older, Heidi does not sense that patience. And especially within myself, there is little to no room or no awareness that this little vessel is still blind and deaf and dumb. And although it can interact to a certain point, well, it's going to hit another flint, whoosh, and there's going to be a spark. And that spark is for me to wake up, for me to see something that I hadn't seen. And I got to see how the ripple of unconscious reaction unfolds when I forget myself, I forget to do one thing, I forget to communicate with somebody who's in charge of me, that I'm finished with the task. I forget the chain of command so that things can move forward as a team. I got to see that unfold, and the pain on people's faces and the pain in my own mind and body. Not intentional. There was nothing in me that intentionally tried to make the moment worse, but there's something that's undeveloped that gets in a rush, that starts to go ahead, charge ahead when it's not time. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for that because I can see now, well, and I'll have to do it again, that it's immaturity. It's something that must be revealed. Or how would I ever know? How would I ever truly know that something needs to grow a little more, a little more? So I'm grateful to the work and grateful to the people in the work who can endure the pain that is caused as that light gets struck and hit so that something new can be born within me, within the moment.
Well, there's always something more to be added, but it shall not be today. I'll see you all Wednesday, Deep Dive Wednesday.
Thank you.